last night was a big development as far as my feelings on the Commanders' offseason. Mike McDaniel took a job as an offensive coordinator. He pulled his name from the searches he was still involved in and interviews that he was still scheduled to continue to do for head coaching jobs, including in Cleveland, where I'll bet he could have gotten the Browns job if he wanted it. He's not going to take the Browns job. He is an OC. He is going to call plays for the LA Chargers for Jim Harbaugh. I love that Harbaugh, who is a legendary coach who has great success wherever he goes, that is a championship caliber coach, is willing, as a former quarterback and play caller himself and an offensive guy, to take the back seat here and to allow McDaniel to come in and run his offense. I thought that was cool of him. It's a good hire. This is great news for Justin Herbert, who's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, but he is the poster child right now for talent and non-accomplishment, which I don't think is his fault. The way that we talk about this sport, the way that a lot of folks cover the sport, you're the quarterback and you get all the blame and all of the praise, so to speak. But Herbert is actually excellent and deserving of probably better than has happened in his career. But now you get to work with Mike McDaniel. This is a hell of a hire for the Chargers.
Yeah, it's great for the Chargers. Like, if you're naming teams that it's great for, the Chargers are the team that would come to mind. They get a head coach, a guy that a lot of teams wanted to be their head coach as an OC. Now, maybe it's for a year because he wants to be a head coach again, or maybe he doesn't. We don't know. But the story to me isn't that LA landed a great big fish. It's that Washington wasn't interested. There's a huge dividing line here. There's a distinction. Not they tried or they asked and he said no, as far as we know. I would tell you this. If you're listening over there in Ashburn, here's what needs to happen. Two different things need to happen. The first is you should leak to whoever you want to leak to. Mike Garafolo, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter. I don't know, maybe one of the local reporters who's there every day covering stuff for you, but I know that's not your MO. We tried to make some trades when we were terrible and nobody wanted any of our players. Leak that out, but in a nicer way. You should have tried to get more draft picks. I need to know that. The second thing,
it seems kind of irrelevant right now.
Totally relevant. They have no draft picks, and they should have tried.
The Danny Rouillet aggravation list.
Yeah,
here.
And because this is aggravating. Here are the two things. Right now, I am losing confidence in this regime. Here's how you make people lose confidence: a bad process. If you didn't try to trade players, you should be held to the mat for it, held to account for it. If you didn't call Mike McDaniel and say, "Can we interview you?" and he has to say, "Thank you, but no thank you," you look like you don't know what you're doing. You need to interview Mike McDaniel. Attention, everyone. You're going to be so tired of hearing me say this today. You need to interview Mike McDaniel. How could you not interview him? You could still land on David Blau, by the way. I like David Blau. I'm excited about the hire. I actually think it's cool that you got a guy a year early instead of a year too late because I'm from Washington. I have seen this before. You must interview Mike McDaniel for a minimum. He coached against you this year. He's really good at offense. What did he think of you? Pick his brain at a minimum. They interviewed London Bridge, Drew Tyrell, and two other dudes you don't know for this incomplete, ridiculous process. You can still land on David Blau. You can still end up with a really good candidate, a really good potential offensive coordinator. How could you not interview Mike McDaniel? How could you go through this, pat yourself on the back at a presser? We got him. Did you? Do you know? The prom queen just became available during prom season. Get one of those viral videos together where you make an ask. She tells you no. Great. On to the next. David Blau is the your friend. It's Boof from Teen Wolf. She'll be available. She'll be around. One other team might have wanted to go after him. Settle down. How could you not interview Mike McDaniel? How? You need to leak it. You must leak it now that you tried and he said no. There's a million reasons why he may not want to. I'm going to be a head coach, or I want to go back to the West Coast. Or, you know what? I don't like being in D.C. I don't like that the stadium's so far away from where we practice. I got a lot of painful memories there. I love you, Dan Quinn, but it's not for me. I want a different situation. He's allowed to not want to come. He's allowed to want to pursue other opportunities. This isn't Russia. You don't drag his ass to a gulag and make him sign. You must interview Mike McDaniel when he's available. Otherwise, you are unserious. Leak it. Leak it now. Text who you want to text. Grant's phone is open. Text him. Leak it now that you tried and he said no. Leak it now or it's a farce. Leak it now or your process sucks. Leak it now or my vote of confidence goes Why is it low? Because their process is embarrassing. You must interview Mike McDaniel when he becomes available if you would like an offense that's good. Back to you.
Was Boof the girl in Teen Wolf? How do you spell that?
I think there was a nickname, Boof. Boof. Not to be confused with Keith Boof from Maryland, the undersized power forward.
Keith Boof.
Boof.
So, a lot to chew on there. I'll work my way back through some of that. Someone in their car, I'd imagine right now, is going, why is Danny so worked up today? They chose to go opposite Mike McDaniel 2 weeks ago. And I think, if I could connect some dots here, Danny, it's because he chose to be an offensive coordinator, not a head coach.
Ah, there it is.
And by being willing to be an offensive coordinator, not a head coach, your suggestion is you shouldn't have said no for him. You should have let him say no. Am I getting that right?
To a degree. And again, you could interview him and go, you know what? He's a little too quirky. He's not our cup of tea. But you know what you did? What's the word I'm looking for? It's a combo word, 2 words. Found out. You interview that person. You speak to that person and find out, you know what? He may not be for us. We like David Blau better. You're allowed to like David Blau better. Again, I like where they landed. But you blindfolded yourself and hit yourself in the knee with a hammer and rolled around on the ground and took your blindfold and go, oh, look where we landed. This is a good spot. That's not a good process. That's a bad process.
I have to assume, and I've said this for over a week, because I was told that they did not formally reach out and request an interview with Mike McDaniel at any point. It's not that he turned it down. It's that there was no slip sent. There's no call of the agent. There's no trying to get him on the docket. And your point that is a misstep, I actually agree with totally. I'm assuming, I don't know this to be fact, but for my own sanity, I'm just assuming that the really good friend of Mike McDaniel, Dan Quinn, probably texted or called, hopefully talked on the phone with him at some point to just gauge interest. Hey, what are you thinking? Hey, I want to be a head coach. Okay, cool. Are you going to be a head coach or a coordinator? Probably going to be a head coach. All right, then I'll keep it moving. Or, how interested in coming here are you? And he goes, look, not a big fan, didn't love the area. They fired me once, don't really want to go back. I just have to assume that, Danny. But you're right. Like a lot of times, you're very passionate, and you could go on a rant, and I'll be like, that's really entertaining. I don't completely agree with all of that, but it's really good. This, I completely agree with you. Almost every word that you said. If he's available and willing to talk about offensive coordinating jobs, and you've got Jaden Daniels, which theoretically should be one of the great assets in bringing in an offensive coach in the entire sport, you need to do your best to hire the best coach possible. With all due respect to Lunda Wells, the tight ends coach for the Cowboys, who fans wouldn't be able to recognize if he was sitting on their lap. Or Drew Terrell, who was here for a cup of coffee as a receivers coach and then went to Arizona to be part of the Cardinals the last couple of years. You just can't convince me that those guys are better offensive coordinator hires than Mike McDaniel. So why are you interviewing them and not Mike McDaniel? In building, they interviewed Brian Johnson and David Rye and obviously David Blau, who eventually got the job. But they basically interviewed, not basically, to my knowledge, unless I'm missing someone, they interviewed 2 external candidates. That's it. Total. 2. Lunda Wells, the tight ends coach for the Cowboys, and Drew Terrell, the Cardinals wide receivers coach. 0 people who have ever been a coordinator before, and 0 people who have ever called plays. Now, I'm on record as saying I like the Blau hire. I am on record as saying I like the promotion of a year too early, not a year too late. I think that can be true, and what you're saying can also be true, which was I need to know a little bit more about how hard they work to get some details on Mike McDaniel. Because his willingness to be an OC, which we found was a reality last night when he went to the Chargers, tells me that maybe, just maybe, he would have interviewed, would have taken the call. He interviewed for other OC jobs, by the way. The Chargers weren't the only one. Now, do I think he'd probably rather choose the Chargers over the Commanders? I do. I think the Chargers have a better offense. I think Justin Herbert is a more established, more proven quarterback right now than Jaden Daniels. I think it's a program that's been in the playoffs 2 straight years. Jim Harbaugh has a longer, more illustrious resume than Dan Quinn. So the Chargers' job, in my opinion, playing indoors at SoFi on carpet, is a better job than the Washington job.
Right now, this minute, yeah.
But let him tell you that. That's not your job. And I guess succinctly, the thesis would be, you have an opening. There are 32 of these jobs in the world. You better do the most thorough search ever and interview the best candidates. How can you convince anyone that Mike McDaniel's not one of those candidates? The last time he was a coordinator, Danny, forget head coach, the offense ranked number 1 overall and number 1 in passing. As a head coach the last 2 years, his offenses have ranked 14th and 22nd when he was calling plays, although they were number 4 in rushing this past year. But his first 2 years in Miami when he had weapons and Tyreek Hill was cooking and his thing was working, number 2 on offense, number 2 on offense, number 1 rushing, number 2 passing, number 2 passing, some of his rankings from his first 2 years. How do you not want to talk to that guy?
How are you not interviewing him? Again, you are more than allowed to settle on somebody else. And settle even has a negative connotation. I just mean choose someone else. It is reasonable that you went through this process. Think of the Rams when they hired Sean McVay. They're interviewing everybody under the sun, and this guy comes in and blows them away, and they go, oh my God, we didn't expect that. But you interviewed the guy, and now you get here. Now you get a coach that's won a Super Bowl and has a chance to go back to get another one. Has been to 2. It boggles the mind that this was the process. I will say it for the millionth time because no one hears this part. There is a great chance they reached out behind the scenes and he said no. That must come out. That has to come out. Otherwise, this looks so amateurish. This looks like the most pathetic search in human history.
Yeah, what if I were to tell you, let's just say hypothetically that I find out, not only, because we know they didn't interview him.
Right.
We know they didn't ask him to interview. Those are the things we know. But I am assuming, and have all along, that there was a conversation between Quinn and his very good friend Mike McDaniel. Because that's the other thing that nobody wants to talk about,
right,
but is a reality. It's not just Jaden Daniels. It's Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel aren't best buddies. Mike McDaniel didn't spend portions of press conference this year praising Jim Harbaugh for his sobriety and saving his life and being a great mentor. That's Dan Quinn, right? So if there was no conversation at all, if they treated Mike McDaniel like they did any other coach that got dismissed, and they're just, hey, man, sorry you lost your job text from his buddy Dan Quinn. You'll land on your feet, no worries. Like, if that's the extent
call him if you need something
of the communication, we find out. You'll feel?
Livid. I mean, it's inexcusable. Again, it's not, you didn't interview Brian Daboll. You didn't interview Kevin Stefanski to have him then say, no, I'm going to be a head coach. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't try to find anybody. You landed on David Blau, which is something I'm happy about. I think it's good. Because, again, I'm from Washington. I know about losing a guy because you didn't think he was ready a year early, and now you miss out on Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur and even Mike McDaniel. I've done this dance before where talent gets out of the building. The basic gist here to me, this is how it looks, all right, is Dan Quinn one time got jilted at the altar. He lost his OC and didn't have an internal answer, you see. He has to go internally, just has to. So a girl broke my heart who grew up in North Carolina. I can never date anyone from that state again. Like, grow up. Like, it's so pathetic. Again, you might have gotten a great OC, but you don't get to congratulate yourself for a good and thorough process because it wasn't one. Look at how they're doing the defensive coordinator search. That's what it looks like. If you're afraid to lose David Blau, then you can move your ass quickly. There's enough time to interview Mike McDaniel, to at least call him, to figure out if he has any interest in coming here. If not, we need to know about that. Otherwise, it looked like you weren't interested. It looked like an unserious search.
I do think that a lot of things can be true, one of which is it is really hard to suggest that they did a very thorough search. Generally, when it lands on the person that was right down the hall from whoever you fired, it's a good indicator that the search was not that thorough. Sometimes it can be. I know the Wizards, remember, when they went from Ernie Grunfeld to Tommy Shepard, had the big piece in the Post where they talked to like 77 people and Barack Obama was involved or something.
For some reason.
Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
It was a wild story. But the point I'm making is, like, occasionally you can do a thorough search and the right guy's still in your building. The Caps did that when they promoted Brian McClellan. He was the right guy. And again, Blau might be the right guy. I think it is very possible he's awesome. It is very possible it was a great hire. It is very possible that the search worked beautifully. But you can't tell me when you talk to Lunda Wells and Drew Terrell and no one else from outside your building that it was a overturning every rock search. It just wasn't. It wasn't. That can be okay. But as we find out that Mike McDaniel's taking an OC job, not a head coach job, I would like to double click on the due diligence that was done. I know there was no interview. I know that they wanted to keep it moving. We talked about all the reasons why they did. They were worried that they might lose out on Blau. They thought he could get a head coaching job. Even if he didn't get a head coaching job, they thought it could drag on for weeks, and it did, by the way. Here we are in January 21, and we find out he's an OC. So now they would just be going to the next phase of their interviews, and maybe you've missed out on 2 or 3 names that you really like. Those are all possible reasons. Also, they might tell you he's going to be a head coach 365 days from now, and we don't want Jaden to learn 2 offenses in 2 years. That's why we kept Blau, because he's going to be here for a couple years. There's lots of possible reasons why they did what they did. But I can completely agree with you that when the savant, who has 3 times over had one of the best offenses in the league in the last 5 years, becomes available, who's best friends with your coach, and you've got supposedly one of the great quarterbacks in the league that everybody wants to work with, maybe you should just call him. If that's the point, I'll sign up for that.
It's so simple. Again, there's no way around that. There's no way around. You must try to interview Mike McDaniel. How could you not? How could you not? They hired David Blau, I think January 10th, I think was the announcement, was the formal thing. Mike McDaniel got fired on January 7th or 8th. I can't remember the exact part of the timeline. But you need to let people know.
Friday the 9th is when the Blau
that's when it dropped. Okay.
We were at Pupatello.
That's right. It was a Friday evening.
In Chantilly.
So you need to let everyone know somehow, some way, that a couple guys that we reached out to, because we were looking for big fish on this one, the same way we're doing with the defensive coordinator search, by the way. Look how thorough that is. That's the part that tells you what this could be, where you're finding a bunch of dudes with pelts on the wall. You're understanding that you might lose a Brian Flores if that's your white whale. You might lose a Jim Schwartz. You might lose Jonathan Gannon, who's interviewing with everyone and anyone. Right?
I got news for you, though. They don't care that much about letting people know what they did and why they did it.
I know.
More than almost any regime I've ever been around in any sport, they're not filling in the blanks for you. They're doing what they want to do. You can watch it. The results will take care of themselves. That's kind of their philosophy. But they're not out here Ron Rivera-ing it and texting you and telling you, hey, this is why we're doing this.
They certainly are not.
That's not their MO. It's not what they do. And when they went to the NFC Championship game, it worked out beautifully. But last year was a little bit tougher.